SANAAAPThe Saudiled military coalition fighting Shiite rebels in Yemen said on Wednesday that it will reopen the war-torn country's main airport and a vital Red Sea port to some humanitarian aid shipments, easing a blockade imposed after rebels fired a missile toward the Saudi capital earlier this month. The easing is to begin on Thursday. The airport in the capital of Sanaa would reopen to UN aircraft and the seaport of Hodeida would be able to receive urgent humanitarian aid, the coalition statement said. It was not immediately clear, however, if port operations will return to the pre-blockade level. It is good news, but we are still waiting to see the specific details, Jamie McGoldrick, the UN humanitarian chief for Yemen, said of Wednesday's announcement. In an interview just before the coalition made the announcement, McGoldrick told the Associated Press that a continued blockade would make Yemen's long-suffering population more vulnerable to cholera and famine. Millions in Yemen are at immediate risk if food aid and the supply of fuel for pumping clean water are interrupted, he said. About 7 million people in Yemen, out of a population of 27 million, depend entirely on food aid, and 4 million rely on aid groups for clean water. A disruption of water supplies could reverse recent gains in containing the spread of cholera, which reached about 900,000 suspected cases over the past year, he added. It was not clear if fuel imports, crucial for supplying clean water, would resume as part of the easing of the blockade, he said. McGoldrick said his office put in a request to fly UN staff into Sanaa on Thursday. Hundreds of humanitarian staffers from nearly 50 agencies are stranded in Yemen or unable to enter the country, said a Sanaa-based UN official. Ahmed Ben Lasoued of the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said 32 flights have been cancelled since November 6, when the coalition ordered a tightening of the Yemen blockade. The blockade is severely hampering humanitarian operations, impeding humanitarians to provide much-needed assistance to millions of people who rely on it for their survival, Ben Lasoued said. Earlier Wednesday, 2 flights landed in Sanaa airport for the first time since the November 6 tightening of the blockade by the Saudiled coalition. One flight evacuated 5 staffers of the International Committee of the Red Cross, according to SANAAAPThe of the ICRC in Yemen. A second flight carried Russian diplomats, according to an airport official who spoke on condition of anonymity because he was not authorized to speak to the media. McGoldrick said that a flight carrying vaccines, sufficient to begin vaccinations of about 1 million children, is expected to land in Sanaa over the weekend. The Saudiled coalition tightened a blockade of the Arab world's poorest country earlier this month, after a missile assault by Shiite rebels that targeted the Saudi capital, Riyadh. The missile was struck down, but it was the farthest a projectile by the rebels, also known as vows, had penetrated into the kingdom. In response, ships were ordered to leave the Red Sea ports of Hodeida and Salaf, the only lifeline to northern Yemen where most of the population lives. The 2 ports are under the control of the Houthis. The conflict in Yemen pits Houthi rebels and forces loyal to Yemen's ousted president against the internationally recognized government and its main backer, the Saudiled coalition. For more than 2 years, airstrikes and ground fighting have left over 10,000 people dead, driven 3 million from their homes and destroyed the country's already fragile infrastructure. International aid groups describe Yemen as the world's worst humanitarian crisis as millions are at risk of famine. Since November 6, the UN and international aid agencies have repeatedly urged the coalition to lift the Yemen blockade.